welcome once again to Markets Insight this beautiful Monday morning in the city of Lagos, and you're watching Suk News Television. I am David Chiedu. On the program this morning, we're talking about Nigeria's natural, or if you like, Nigeria's vast natural gas reserves, and essentially we are highlighting and examining how to harness them, how to maximize them for full economic development and growth, as it were, so that we can attain the underdependence of, on crude oil, as it were. And this morning, we are going to get straight into the conversation very shortly, but not before we take a look at what has been happening, or what did happen, rather, on the floor of the NGX last week, ended Friday, October 11, 2024. So at the end of last week's trading, or the last weekday of trading on the Nigerian Stock Exchange, a total of 304,430,135 shares in 6,950 deals, corresponding to a market value of 5,599,374,821 naira 26 kobo were traded. Compared with the previous NGX trading day, that was Thursday, October 10, Friday's data showed a 10% improvement in volume, 20% improvement in turnover, but a 2% decline in deals. The current market capitalization of the Nigerian Stock Exchange is 56.1 trillion naira as at today. In aggregate, the 121 NGX listed equities participated in trading, ending with 31 gainers and 19 losers. Sterling Bank led the gainers with 9.45%, 9.45% share price appreciation, closing at 4 naira 98 kobo per share, followed by Consolidated Hallmark Holdings going up 9.45%, Metcure Industries going up 9.19%, and Regency Alliance Insurance going up 9.09%. On the losing side, Deep Capital Management and Trust came out last, with an end-of-day price depreciation of 9.93% at 1 naira 36 kobo per share, followed by NEM Insurance Company. Dow Communications went down 9.52%, and Tantalizers down 9.09%. Access Holdings recorded the highest volume of 68.3 million traded shares, followed by Fidelity Bank PLC at 43.2 million shares, United Bank for Africa UBA at 25.4 million shares, and Zenith Bank PLC at 19.7 million shares. And that's what it looked like on the floor of the NGX last week, talking about Friday, October 11, 2024. We'll move further now to the conversation proper this morning, where we talk about Nigeria's gas reserves and forging a path or pathway towards less dependence on crude oil and, of course, consequent economic growth very shortly. Join us. Welcome back to Market Insight on Suk News Television. Nigeria does indeed have enormous amounts of gas in its reserves, but for some reason we have been unable to tap into it, or if you like, maximize it so far. So today we're talking about Nigeria's gas reserves and forging a pathway towards sustainability with regards to economic growth and underdependence on crude oil. Now, as Africa's largest crude oil producer, Nigeria is seeking to reduce its dependency on oil by encouraging investment in its underutilized gas reserves, which amounts to over 200 trillion cubic feet. Now, currently, much of the country's gas output is either flared or re-injected into wells. According to the NNPC, Nigeria has over 202 trillion TCF, that's trillion cubic feet of untapped proven gas reserves, and that's the estimated recoverable gas is about 139.4 trillion cubic feet. To harness the country's gas resources, Shell and its partners, including the NNPCL, Total Energies, and Eni, have signed a gas supply and purchase agreement to realize the $3.5 billion Brass Fertilizer and Petrochemical Company Limited's project. Now, this particular project, a crucial part of Nigeria's Decade of Gas initiative, is set to harness Nigeria's vast gas reserves for industrial growth and economic development. To discuss what this means for us in the country, we're joined this morning by Mr. Nutsu Cyril. He's an information and communications technologist, a system analyst, and a socio-political and economic analyst. Many thanks for joining us, Mr. Cyril. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you. Thank you so much for having me this morning.
Good morning. Once again. Now, considering what the federal government and the IOCs are trying to do with brass and its gas deal, what are your thoughts, first of all? Let's get your thoughts on its potential therein.
Frankly speaking, I want to draw attention to something critical when it comes to national assets and investments and technology. Nigeria today does not have, the only refinery we have functioning is the Dangote refinery, which is a private sector-driven refinery. And we are looking at the gas sector, bearing in mind that we have enormous gas reserve, just as you stated in your introductory statements or remarks. You find out that we are going the same route we went during the petroleum era, the crude oil era. We are going the same route. What do I mean by that? The project in brass is a project midwifed by local content, NNPCL, and a private entity. They have gone ahead. They signed this business investment decision document in 2021, I think so, sometime January, February. And since then, they have been working behind the scene. But there's something that is noteworthy. The investment is funded. The whole process is led by a private sector company. And after production, the off-takers are a multinational, but not indigenous to Nigeria. Why am I saying this? You have resources, natural resources, which you need to add value using technology. After adding value to it, your people will get jobs because you're adding value to it. And their socio-economic status will improve. But today, here we are. We bring in international players to come and set up a plant to use the gas, produce methanol, use the methanol, and export the methanol. The facility is located at the shore where you can easily export. Why am I saying this? You will find out that the initiative, the intent behind this is strictly business and is not after the welfare of Nigerians and to start the economic challenges confronting Nigerians right now. What you see is still the same old story, big players coming in, speaking big English, and making it difficult for citizens to key into a project that is in quotes, designated or designed to solve their problem. Now, in the implementation, in the build up to this methanol project was initiated and domiciled in terms of governance in the Federal Ministry of Innovation, Science and Technology, previously Federal Ministry of Science, Technology and Innovation. This project is domiciled there. What role is the ministry playing to have technology transfer, because one of the agencies of the ministry by the National Policy on Methanol Fuel Production Technology is charged to lead R&D in this sector so that whatever we are producing, we have the foreknowledge as to how to sustain it and grow the technology to create more jobs and make the economy very, very vibrant. So for me, the route is not the proper route. However, it is because the intent is not what the nation needs. Thank you.
Mr. Cyril, when you say that this is not what the nation needs, I'm curious because for so long now we've been largely dependent on crude oil, for our main revenue. It's our mainstay as far as revenue is concerned. But in this case, we have a chance to, um, chart a course that would see us slowly but surely disengage. I put that in giant inverted commas, by the way, from what we have always known as the status quo. Are you still saying that this is not or rather, you said earlier that this is not, what we need at this moment? Can you marry both together, draw parallels? Because I'm thinking, we want to get out of where we have been to where we should be, and then you say that this is not what we need. Can you expatiate more, if you will?
Okay, I will expatiate more in this regard. If the government of the day is key on supporting and helping citizens move out of the economic challenges they find themselves, why invest a whooping $3.5 billion at just one location, and this business design is such that after production, a foreign company takes it and exports it? So all the statements that we now have, we are going to have a methanol plant that will be producing 10,000 metric tons of methanol per day. I mean, it doesn't add up, because if you produce and it's not for the Nigerian market, of what use it is it? And if you look at the job creation, that unit is going to generate plus or minus about 5,000 jobs after the place has been set up. As compared to, if you split that 3.5 billion and have methanol plants dotted across the region where you have feedstock for methanol production, and each methanol plant will cost you, modular methanol plant will cost you less than 50 million US dollars. Don't you think that will be much more productive? Don't you think that will enable Nigerians understand the technological impact of the methanol economy? And don't you think that will help in creating a very broad value chain for Nigerians? Let me tell you, methanol is used for over 1,000 products that we use every day. And here we are saying that methanol will be produced in Nigeria, shipped abroad, and used to produce those things that we use every day and bring it back. So where is it? Where is the stake of the average citizen? Is it just for consumption? I don't know if you get my point. So critical thinking deserves that before implementation, you should look at how will this help the ordinary man? The situation we have now is a situation, and mind you, where the refinery, the methanol plant is located, sited, is a trade-free zone. And they will be getting tax holidays, no expatriate quota. So what this invariably means is that everybody can come into Nigeria to that zone to work and do business without being taxed. And what will be produced for 10 years will be up.
All right. Thank you very much, Mr. Cyril. This is still Market Insights. We're talking about Nigeria's
can you hear me?
collaboration with IOCs to realize the gas project signed with BRAS to the tune of 3.5 billion US dollars to help tap into, or if you want to use the term, maximize or harness our vast gas reserves in the country. And to talk more about it, we're joined this morning by Dr. Ayodele. He is partner and chair of the Energy and Natural Resources Practice Group, Bloomfield LP. Dr. Beg your pardon, Oni, thank you for joining us.
Thank you very much for having me.
Right. Now, apparently some stakeholders have expressed optimism in this particular project or this particular initiative. Can't say the same for a few others who seem to be on the fence or who seem to express some sort of, pessimism. But, upon completion, the government anticipates that this particular project will generate over $1.5 billion annually from export of gas-based products and others, as well as saving us over $200 million in foreign exchange, and also bring in an estimated $3.3 billion annually into the country or into the country's economy, as you were. So what sort of impacts, in your view, Doctor, would this have economically, specifically on, critical sectors and perhaps a trickle-down effect on local businesses and even households, perhaps?
Okay. First point I'd like to make is that I'm excited that we can begin to add value to our vast natural resource. Typically, we've been hewers of wood and drawers of water, where we have base resource and we export those base resource and then buy finished products. That means from a balance of trade and a balance of payment standpoint, we're in a deficit, usually. But when you then have your base resource and add value to it in your country and export those products, resins, dye, adhesives, those things that are products from your methanol products, which you use your natural gas for. I think that is going to improve our balance of trade, improve our balance of payment. Also, because jobs will be created, the items, the final products are exported, but the production is done here. So it helps improve industrialization. It helps further have a case, a use for our natural gas, an argument to be able to produce more natural gas, because like everyone says, Nigeria is a gas province with some oil. We've got both non-associated gas and associated gas, and we do quite a bit around production. We can do much more, but in terms of use case, it's been poor. Historically, it was for a long time, it was just the power sector, what used to be PHCN or NEPA, but now you find more industrialization, you find more use, for example, the methanol and a number of other use cases for gas. So I think we're on the right path in terms of what we seek to do, and I expect that we'll do more. But from a balance of trade, balance of payment, it would improve, and from an overall income generation beyond just selling a base natural resource, I think it's a plus.
Now, your thought seems to be at odds, variance with our other guest, Mr. Cyril, because he thinks that the intent to start with is, not what we need at this point in time, and that, again, in his words, is not particularly for the local markets. That's some sort of, some might call it a pessimistic view, as it were. What are your thoughts?
Okay, so I see some of his points, and there's always two sides to anything. There'd always be the positive and the negatives. So he's raised those areas that are challenging, and I do not see any need to be adverse to his position, because it's making sense. It's just that you could also see the cup half full rather than half empty. Question though is how much demand we've got in country, because from an industrialization standpoint, from a demand standpoint, and from a freedom of enterprise standpoint, there's only so much you can do. For example, you can have your domestic crude supply obligation, domestic gas demand obligations. You can have all of those obligations for people to reserve certain quantities for domestic use. But in terms of encouraging people to do free enterprise, and like he did mention, it's in a free trade zone, and typically free trade zones support exports. Now, his argument, which will also be brilliant, is that in free trade zones, you get away with certain things. You don't pay taxes, your forex laws don't apply, certain things don't apply that give you a lot of liberty. And being a free trade zone doesn't mean those products can't be used in country. It just means that most times they are export processing zones, so to speak. So from the outset, the idea may have been what we're now seeing, but I also believe that generally speaking, if there's a use case, I'm not sure that anyone would then say, well, I don't care about what's happening in Nigeria, I just only do export. So one needs to, I mean, you need to better understand the ideas, the ideals behind setting up that business in the first place. Some of that I haven't inquired into, but from my general knowledge of how the sector does work and what I think they're trying to achieve, it'll be very difficult to completely to prosecute them, so to speak, or persecute them, because it's business. And if as much as we want to promote free enterprise, we're talking about enabling doing business in Nigeria. For me, it wouldn't be such a problem.
Now, you spoke about demand in your remarks. Now, let's go that road for a little bit. Our year-to-date sales of natural gas in the domestic market, as at end of August, just 2 months ago, is at 1.768 billion standard cubic feet per day. This is according to the Upstream Petroleum Regulatory Commission, the Nigerian Upstream Petroleum Regulatory Commission, as you were. Now, compared to market demand, would you say that this is adequate?
So, in terms of demand matching supply, it would be not necessarily adequate. But the questions you'd have to ask. See, the challenges around gas are historical challenges. For a long time, the commercial arrangement was poor, and I'm sure my colleague is aware that at some point, gas producers were forced to sell gas less than their cost of production, and there was only one major buyer, NEPA, PTN, which was government owned. Until we then started to have the NAOC power deal, or a number of those independent power projects. It was even as a result of that we started talking about securitization in energy, in gas. So I think that historically those challenges have been there, and for energy projects there are long lead times. So if you've had historical challenges, things won't change overnight. So we're not doing sufficiently well from a dumb gas standpoint, demand matching supply, but because poor infrastructure over a long time. Remember this, and he'll confirm, the eastern and the western gas pipeline were unintegrated. There was no integration. Recently, we started to have projects like Oben. We started to have a number of projects. We're talking about the AKK under the broader Nigerian gas project arrangement. If you have an unintegrated system where your gas network is not integrated, you can't combine, you can't join north, you can't join east and west, and you hardly add anything in north or an integration, then it would impact. People then begin to do virtual pipeline and truck gas, do CNG, which is of course more expensive. It's like power. Grid power would always be cheaper than when you have your own independent IPPs, right? Which you power with CNG. PNG, which is pipeline gas, would always be cheaper. So historically, we have had that challenge. It won't be one day that you'd solve that problem. That's why many of the first set of gas projects were export projects. Also can condensate, the NLNGs were all export projects. But as demand continued to improve and pricing seemed to improve, starting from 2008, when we had the dumb gas policy and regulations made pursuant to the gas policy. Then you begin to have an arrangement where you use a liquid-based pricing arrangement and all of that. So things are looking up, but it's not going to happen in one day. And the demand is not going to jump from what it was to something else, except, of course, you've had a suppressed demand. So the power sector cries about, so like your question is, there's inadequacy, but the question is the domestic market able to pay the actual price of gas with the floating of the currency? If gas price never changes from say $2 plus, that was 800 naira a year plus ago. Now at 1.6, that's over 3,006. Pascoff or whatever measurement it is they use. So it's not sufficient to just wish it. You'd also have to consider the broader commercial framework and pricing arrangement, because we still have the gas aggregator, right, who connects buyers and sellers. You need to get your gas purchase order to be able to negotiate a gas sale and aggregation arrangement and work around the pricing framework set up by the Midstream and Downstream Petroleum Regulatory Authority. Outside of that, if you wanted to do willing buyer, willing seller, it'll be more expensive, and very few people want to do that or can bear that. The private sector cannot even bear that because gas is supposed to be a pass-through. So the more expensive gas becomes, electricity tariffs are going to go up. So you've got to look at it broadly and across sectors, or else you will be making a mistake. So yes, it's true. What he's saying is true in terms of let's encourage domestic use and try to meet demand. I think that's on its way, but I think magic won't happen because we've had historical challenges which we didn't solve quickly enough.
All right, thank you very much, Dr. Oni. Let's cross back to Mr. Cyril, if you can hear me. Can you hear me, Mr. Cyril? Go on. Now, you mentioned, in part of your remarks, you talked about the government and what they own or how much they own as far as, the sector is concerned and what they run or control. We're going to talk about that in a little bit because there's some thoughts in the field of stakeholders who think that, there should be some sort of movement away from what the government controls or what they do not control to more private sector driven initiatives, as it were. We're going to get to that in a moment. However, let's talk about what we need and what can contribute in the next 6 years or thereabout, because 4 years ago the decade of gas initiatives in the federal government and the private players, as you were, was struck to see Nigeria attain the status of a gas-powered economy by 2030 through a series of viable strategies and initiatives, as you were. Now, considering what we have with this particular project with BRAS, how much do you see it contributing, or how much do you see it pushing us further? And if it isn't particularly, if it doesn't qualify, to be mentioned in this category, what needs to be done to further push us closer to achieving that particular dream, so to speak, or initiative?
Okay, interesting question. I think issues around having a gas-centric economy have been on since the Obasanjo regime, to be honest. You need to go memory lane. If you look at certain documents, policy statements, you'd see that there's been that talk, and then Jonathan took it up. So it's been incremental considerations, and we had the year of gas 2020, then 2021 to 2030 is the decade of gas. We've got a number of interesting things. One of the things I see the government doing is a subsidy substitution. What do I mean by subsidy substitution? Instead of paying subsidy or government giving subsidy on liquid fuel, they are saying use gas, which is much cheaper. On the average, I talking about anywhere 30%, probably more, using liquid fuel such as PMS versus or diesel versus using a CNG or an LPG. So what this does play a role in having gas being utilized. The key thing around our own penetration is more around local use, building demand, because without demand, there is no conversation around local use. So people must begin to move away from liquid gas, which appears to be what the government policy is. Move away from liquid gas, liquid hydrocarbons, that's your crude oil, your petroleum products such as PMS, such as your diesel, such as your dual purpose DPK, all of that, and move to CNG LPG, which is cheaper. So we won't give you subsidy anymore. Rather, we'd encourage you to move to gas. Besides, we've got more gas. Like I said to you, We've got almost 50-50 associated and non-associated gas. Much of our gas is associated in liquid with crude, or is a gas cap, or you have a lot of gas fields that are solely gas. So when you have that, you're rich in gas and you're not making the most of it. This is comparative advantage, right? In some cases, even absolute advantage. In economics, once you've got a comparative advantage, you drive that comparative advantage, right? So we're not going to start competing with other countries that have got stuff like maybe even gold much more than we do. But our gas, which we do have much more than other countries, we should first create local demand, power a lot of our industries, factories with that gas, and then be able to sell products internationally. Look at what you've got in countries that have got large populations like China. A lot of production is going on there, and people then, even industries outside of China, come and situate. Yeah, I know that policy may change depending on who wins in the US, right? Because I see that Trump's policy is keep more in the US, and there have been debates around slavery in China for production and hard labor protectionism, all of that. But in this part of the world, and I'm even pro hydrocarbons. Yes, we will begin to see electric vehicles. We are beginning to see a few electric vehicles in Nigeria. But the thing is, the West developed on coal. So we will be doing ourselves a disservice if we do not continue to push our gas narrative. We'll be doing ourselves a disservice if we don't begin to, if government doesn't do more to support projects such as the BRAS, such as the Olokola LNG, and what we currently have with the BRAS methanol, so we should do more. And I think this does play a role in what we have. But around penetration, government needs to provide more enlightenment, more support, tax breaks, fiscal benefits. I mean, a number of fiscal benefits have been rolled out recently, for upstream, deep offshore gas, even crude production. They've been removing tax elements from LPG, from a number of those items, just to push the narrative and encourage people to do more around gas. So we're an entrepreneurial people, and I think we will succeed. It's just that energy projects have longer lead times than many other projects. So yes, these brands does play a role, but more broadly speaking, we require some local work and local demand to be built, and the commercial arrangement should move to a point quite quickly where it's willing buyer, willing seller arrangement for gas. That's what we encourage people to come and invest more.
Interesting. Now, about the point which I was going to get to before this one, what stakeholders have said a few times, that the federal government, or rather that the private sector, should be the main arrowheads or the main drivers for major gas-centered projects, as it were. And then the federal government should be just more or less, should have a perfunctory role as per perhaps maybe providing regulatory frameworks alone. What do you reckon?
I've always been of the view that government has no business in business. Government's business in business is to ensure that businessmen can do their business profitably, efficiently. I think what government should be looking at, you've said part of it, regulation, policy. Now, there have been debates, should we price gas in dollars, continue to pay naira, which is what happens midstream in particular. It's priced in dollars, but you pay in naira. So if it's $2, you're paying the naira equivalent of $2. Now, should we completely take that out and then naira, make everything naira? Maybe that's not viable, because you look at the operating expenditure, a lot of the capex, some of the opex is not naira, right? So it'll be difficult for you to just say everything is naira. So it will be government policy, it should be regulation. Government shouldn't really have that business. Government can have equity in businesses doing energy, like the NNPC at some point should be privatized and go on the stock exchange, right? I mean, it will be PLC, but it will be private individuals only, and government can have minority stake. I know a few companies, I wouldn't want to mention their names, are doing really well, but government just had minority stake. So I think, personally, government's business in business is to ensure that businessmen can do their business successfully and can ensure that there are jobs, there's economic prosperity. If you have all of that, then the government will be happy and still make a lot of money from its taxes.
Interesting. Do we have Mr. Cyril now? Mr.
Yes, I'm here.
Mr. Cyril, can you hear me?
Yeah, can you hear me? Can you hear me? I'm here.
You can hear me.
Yes, please.
Let's get some more of your thoughts as we round up. Given your initial remarks and some of Dr. Oni's comments as well, where do you see, in your thoughts, that is, what do you think we need as far as, properly or adequately maximizing and harnessing our vast gas reserves in the country to bring us the lot which we expect to see, or the much needed developments which we expect to see, Mr. Cyril?
I seriously think we should look more of building our local capacity. We have institutions, the National Research Institute for Chemical Technology in Zaria, called NARIT. They have been charged by the National Policy on Methanol Fuel Production, which is actually a policy put in place to beneficiate the gas proceeds in the country. So government should look at empowering that institution, because I think they've gone far in their R&D when it comes to methanol. Right now, they have an integrated system. They are working towards having a prototype, subsequently a pilot phase, then a national rollout. Government should factor this in so that while the brass methanol plant is coming into operations, we should have the capacity to build our own modular methanol plants. That way, brass is in Bayelsa State. That is looking at brass, looking at Cross River, looking at Ondo, Benue, just like that across the country. You find out that we need to do more when it comes to spreading this opportunity brought by this natural resource. If we allow it to be centered on some key players that have, so to say, in quotes, made it look as if it's a monopolistic approach, we'll find it difficult because people will not be aware, people will not key into the entire process. Now, let me say something that is remarkable. All the products we use, majority of the products we use in our day-to-day life.
To hear you. We do apologize sincerely for that little glitch that has made it very difficult for us to catch most of what you are passing on or passing across. Really do apologize. But we thank you again for your time, Mr. Nutsu Cyril. Mr. Cyril is he is an information and communications technologist, a systems analyst, and a socio-political and economic analyst. Many thanks. Back to you, Dr. Oni, as we round up. Now, let's talk about local, enthusiasts, people who are interested in getting involved per se. Either by way of partnering or by way of investing, whichever way. Now, but before then, taking a much broader look at what obtains globally, talking about the gas value chain, what sort of opportunities are there, and then narrowing it down here in this part of the world, for local businesses, and as I mentioned, investors, and, the rest of them who want to be, active players per se.
Okay. Opportunities exist. I'll start from where you've got lower barriers to entry. For example, I co-own 2 LPG, one skid and a station. I'm just a lawyer, so the entry barrier isn't so high. So that's one thing. LPG being quick cooking gas, and it's high demand. It's an high demand, and it's a business that just requires not so much capital. You've got that. You've got even advisory opportunities as a consultant. Information technology is driving a lot now in the world. So from developing systems, developing IT systems, Internet of Things to run stations, to CNG stations. Part of the reasons people say CNG hasn't developed or hasn't moved as fast as it should is because there aren't enough CNG filling stations, right, where you can fill CNG pumps where you can just drive in your vehicle and get CNG. That's one thing. Even multiplier effects. Real estate, the more CNG plants we need, the more people who are in real estate, and people who can focus on gas related real estate. Guys who want to set up, a few companies are setting up mini LNG plants. A few companies are setting up LPG plants, setting up CNG, LPG, for smaller gas plants. People are using virtual pipeline systems. So even the transportation option for virtual pipelines is there. I believe that government needs to do a few things. Infrastructure backbone. Because once you don't expect business people to build infrastructure backbone, it's going to be too expensive, and the end product is going to be expensive because they need to pass on that cost. So it should be government's role to build infrastructure backbone. Internationally, we've got, a lot of countries, particularly in Europe, are looking for an alternative to Russia. That's an opportunity for us. Right? Yes, that's an opportunity for other countries. We've got the pipeline, the Morocco one. We've got the AKK that's supposed to then move further north. We've got those options where we can be an alternative. We've got NLNG, and there are a few others with our BRAS, with our OK that can come on stream. So there's the opportunity to be able to even sell gas internationally, pipe it, sell it through LNG, have condensate projects, So those opportunities exist both locally and internationally for us as a country and for us as individuals, where we can do projects across that value chain. Upstream gas projects exist, midstream, downstream, midstream being refining, there's doing where you can extract gas liquids from your gas stream. You can do that technology. So there's a lot we can do.
Thank you very much, Dr. Ayodele. Dr. Oni is a partner and chair of the Energy and Natural Resources Practice Group, Bloomfield LP. He's joined us this morning to give us his thoughts on what the federal government and the IOCs are doing with regards to our gas, our untapped gas reserves that are vast, and trying to do what they can to see that Nigeria grows economically and depends less on crude oil, as he were. Hopefully, it turns out the way that the plans are going. Hopefully. And that's it on Market Insight. We'll take our attention to the Forex market this morning. Take a look at what it looks like. Today, 14th October 2024, the Naira is trading to the US dollars at 1,621 Naira. To the pound sterling at 2,143 Naira. To the euro at 1,769 Naira. Elsewhere in the parallel market, the trade sees the Naira trading to the dollar at 1,700 Naira, to the pound sterling at 2,270 Naira, to the euro at 1,860 Naira. Many thanks for joining us on the program this morning. It's been quite a delightful conversation with the gentlemen. Do join us tomorrow at the same time for another edition of Market Insight. But stay tuned. At the top of the hour, the news update comes up. I am David Chiedu. Good morning.